thing that we really have to bear in mind is that Europeans have never left their traditions. They've never left their sexual traditions. Most of us, because we're not aware of their sexual traditions, we think that we're exploring something new. They're simply returning us to what they have never stopped doing. So the orgies, the homosexuality, the bi what have you, the bestiality, all the rest of these things, this is a normal part of their recorded history. We are just confused on that particular aspect of it because we're not aware of what they have always done. So in a sense, and I like to say, we're in sex education school, where if I had to guesstimate, I would say that we're maybe in the 6th or 7th grade of an education that's supposed to take you through 4 years of college in terms of what they consider to be normal, what they do. And we are being allowed, if you will, to be introduced and to practice certain European sexual perversions as they feel that we have acquired enough or assimilated enough European culture to embrace this without rejecting it outright. And we've passed a certain threshold, because now you see the pace at which we're embracing things that would be completely illogical, wouldn't even make any kind of sense to me or my parents generation ago. And that's because we have assimilated so much of them into us that we think that we're them. And of course that's not a conscious thought for most of us, but we think that what they do and what they're telling us to do or what they're guiding us to do is normal human behavior. So Europeans become the model of normal human behavior, and we follow it because we believe their lies are telling us or showing us that their sexual behavior is normal. And one of the ways that they make that so easy is that they take individuals who are part of our community and they put them into certain positions of exposure to us. Even if these individuals didn't begin this way, in order for them to maintain that position in a society where your most important goal is to become rich and famous. That means to be seen by everybody, which of course brings up the question, which if you're not rich and famous, that means that you're nobody. So your value comes from the things that you have. So you have these individuals who then are led to or lead themselves to glorify sexual perversions as normal. You don't do these things. If you don't see them as normal and natural, then you're not going to become a superstar. I'm holding the purse strings. It's a simple equation as me being your boss. So even if our job doesn't involve politics, you just simply stock the shelves. Even if our job doesn't involve politics, whatever my politics are, you're not going to disagree with it, at least not publicly, because you know that that can cost you your job and your salary. And in fact, if you're smart in this society, then you will advocate those things that I advocate because you want a career with me. You want to get paid more. So you'll push it even further. And then after you've done this for so long, which is normal human behavior, you have to rationalize insanity. You have to find ways to make yourself believe that you're not insane or you're not acting in an insane fashion. So you begin to promote these things as if they are normal, natural, as if they are you. So there are so many aspects of this sexual insanity that don't have to do with particular sexually insane acts. So the cultural politics, the aggressive cultural politics that would lead us to promote or to participate in certain sexual behaviors, we have to ask, well, how did this come into existence in the first place? Why did we start doing this in the first place? I guess I'll say my mother's generation and part of my generation, firmly believed that we were ethically, morally, sexual superiors of Europeans. It wasn't an arrogance, we just saw what they did and we knew of things that they did, and some of us lived around or with them. So we knew how degenerate their sexual behavior and thought was. And we wouldn't participate in this. We considered ourselves to be their moral superiors on this plane. Once they were able to separate us from our traditions, to separate us from our roots, and to make us believe that there was no such thing as an African personality, that you and I were not part of a family, so therefore I couldn't say, well, this is how Africans behave. You know, we're all human, all the rest of this nonsense taken out of political context. Once you're able to do that, then you can lead people wherever you want to, sexually, politically, economically, what have you. Once you can separate them from roots, and that's, for me, our major problem. When you separate a people from knowing who they are, then you can, what was the saying, if you don't know your history, you don't know your story, any story will do. And we have been separated from who we are. And now that some of us are trying to find that, we have so many Negroes and lost souls who have become the scholars and the major authorities on that, whose truth is the European truth, but it of course is draped in kente cloth and cowrie shells and ankh here and there. So to me, that, if we want to talk about the nature of the problem for us, and it's not a nature problem for them. I'm not going to criticize a European for being a homosexual because I consider that to be normal and natural for them. I'm not going to criticize a European for practicing bestiality or any other sexual perversion because I consider it to be normal and natural for them. I will criticize it for us, and I will especially criticize it for us in terms of those individuals who claim to have an African center and will still promote something that came from nowhere near us. You know, so that's essentially for me where I find the heart of the problem, and why we are running around doing something that's not normal and natural for us. There's a book that came out when I was writing The Sex Imperative, and I can't remember, but it was two white boys who wrote this book, which was trying to explain and rationalize rape as something that should not be criticized because it was a natural phenomenon because you've always found it. That's Western science. You know, you got to place it everywhere, just like homosexuality is the attempt to make homosexuality normal and natural for everybody by placing it in traditional African society. And since we are the oldest people and we've had the oldest civilization ever existed, if you can somehow place it, and the Negro traitors in academia who are pushing for this, that they are the worst as far as I'm concerned, where if you can place homosexuality in traditional African society, then it becomes something normal. It becomes something that you can't persecute something for. You can't persecute people for what's normal and natural.
Because you can date it back to the beginning of time.
And if it's always been with us. But the problem is the evidence remains weak. But when you dominate the media, when you dominate the textbooks, when you dominate the world's truth, then you, as you have done in the past, you make your lies everybody's truth.
I remember talking to one of my mother's mama, Sally, and she said that, you know, when she thinks about the sex imperative and all this that we have learned from Europeans, that we are not really practicing what real sex is, or if we could say what African sex is. We have to really relearn what that is again. I just want you to speak on that as far as the process that now African people have to go through in order to really move back into themselves and understand what real sex is.
Okay. The first thing I would say is that in order for you to move back, you of course have to know what it was, which means that you have to find uncontaminated sources or authorities on this. Because there are so many sources now that are telling us what it was, but these are contaminated sources, and they are simply taking what's white and painting a little black on top of it. That's all that is what's going on. In order for us to do that, and in some cases we just have to logically make assumptions because a lot of stuff has been destroyed. I know, this is one little example, I know that Africans value children more than any other people, entities in their community. Children were the most valued. So I logically know from that that pedophiles or pedophilia could not possibly have come into existence there because pedophiles destroy children. That's automatic. So I would know that sexually that couldn't be part of what I'm looking to go back to. We also know, and we know from a number of sources, that African people pray before sex. We know that they consider sex to be a sacred thing because they consider procreation to be a sacred thing, because procreation, they model themselves upon the universe, and the primary motive force in the universe for African people is procreation. It's creation. Building something like that. The word creation, creator. So when we logically look at the values that African people have that have been outlined, highlighted, discussed in the books, and we can separate the wheat from the chaff, and we can remove the European opinion from what Europeans have recorded, and European opinion from what Africans, traditional Africans, recorded in many instances. When we can find that core, then we can begin to move in that direction. Now, I would argue that the only way that we are really going to get to there as a people is through the removal of the bad. So it's almost like through the process of elimination that you get to the core, what good sex, what sacred sex was to African people.